Hey guys, Chris here. Today I'm answering your questions about photography. So I'm splitting this into two segments. The first are questions that I get all the time that no one asked me specifically for this video, but just questions that are really common that I thought would be great for me to answer, so you can find out those, and that way I don't leave anything out. And then the second part is actually some specific questions that people asked me. I posted on my Instagram story. If you're not following me, at chris.janish, you can find me there, and I posted on Twitter as well. So that's where I'll be pulling questions from for this video. So let's get started. So the first question is, how did I get started in photography and how long have I been doing it? So I got started actually through YouTube. So if you look way back on my YouTube channel, I used to make videos about Nerf guns and all kinds of stuff, mostly Nerf guns. But so I bought a DSLR to make those videos. And I had a DSLR, but I wasn't really into photography. And I actually wanted to be a filmmaker or do video work. And slowly I just ended up taking pictures sometimes. A couple friends asked me to do their senior pictures. And I kind of just went from there, and eventually I ended up really enjoying it. And I just continued to take senior pictures and take pictures in general and grow as a photographer. So really I've been doing photography 5 or 6 years, but full-time 2 or 3. That I've really been taking it seriously and making a career out of it. Our next question is, what camera do I use? So I am filming right now and I do all my photography on the Sony a7 III. I bought this right after it came out, about 2 years ago, I believe. And I've been loving it ever since. It's just been a great camera for me that can really do everything I need it to. It's really important for me to have a camera that does really good video as well as photos, not only for this YouTube thing that's kind of on the side, but I do professional video work as well, and I need a camera that I can rely on and trust to take that type of content. So the Sony a7 III is the camera that I use. Next question is, what is my favorite lens and why? My favorite lens is really any 50mm. I really love the Sigma Art series. That 50mm is my favorite, but it has some problems. It's not as good for video, so I actually have the Sony 50mm as well. So I have two 50mm, and it's just anything 50mm is my favorite. I just love the focal distance, the soft depth of field, and it's just a great lens. All right, our next question. Out of all the photography equipment that I own, is there anything that I've regretted buying? Not specifically. I tend to be pretty frugal as far as I don't spend a lot on unnecessary things, and I do my research before I buy something, and I really make sure that I know that I want it before I spend money on it. So I don't have anything specifically. I actually did buy the Sigma 85mm at one point, and I bought it, used it for a couple weeks. Every time I used it, I would throw the 50mm back on, and I just liked the way the 50mm looked more. So I actually ended up returning that lens, and so that's the only thing that I regret, but I didn't end up having to pay for it, just return shipping, so it all worked out. All right, so the last question I have for these kind of pre-set up ones is, what editing software I use, or what is my workflow for editing. I almost exclusively use Lightroom. I import all the photos to Lightroom, use it to organize the photos. I rate them and then process them in Lightroom. I rarely go into Photoshop, only for very specific projects. So it's basically Lightroom, and I actually have a video that I'll put a card up to right now that is editing a photo and showing you my process in Lightroom of editing a photo. And then I actually have a video coming out here in a couple of weeks about the whole batch process and how I sort photos, rate photos, and kind of go through after a wedding. So subscribe and stay tuned for that one as well. All right, on to the questions that were actually asked by specific people. Junior Angelo asks, what is an affordable lens that is very crisp? And I would always recommend the 50mm 1.8 for whichever camera system you're on. If you're on Canon, they have a great one, that the STM version retails for about $125, and you can even get used to the older version for as little as like $80. I think I sold mine for $75. So, and that was a great lens. I didn't have any problem with it. I just got the Sigma 50mm, but any of those, the Sony version of it, I think is $225, so it's still pretty affordable. But that lens is just super crisp, super nice, and I've never had anyone really complain about it. Caitlin asks, hot tips for product photography with only an iPhone. My biggest recommendation for this would be to control the light. So the more light you can get in there, shooting in front of a window or anything like that's going to help a ton when you're shooting with an iPhone. And then I would also say to control the background. And how you can do that, you can pick up some cheap poster board and build your own, white background or colored background studio setup, and basically be able to do that. And you really won't be able to tell that the photos are shot with an iPhone. Dustin asks, what's a good editing program for someone who's just getting started or wants to do photography? I always recommend Lightroom. That's what I use. You can get the photography plan, and especially if you're a student, you can get a really good deal on it. So I highly recommend checking out Adobe and their products and seeing what kind of deal you can get on Lightroom and Photoshop and any of those services. If you're really looking for something totally free, Lightroom Mobile is free, and you can do a lot with it. You can even download presets to it without having to pay for it, and it can be a great way to kind of dip your foot in the water and see what you like. Last question, Eli asks, how did I get my name out there in smaller towns like Ashland or Medford? How I did that was really just growing on Instagram, collaborating with as many people as I could. When I started photography, I only had, I think, 300 followers or something like that. I just built my social profiles from there, collaborating with people, and really just creating and doing as many photo shoots as I could. I think when I started, I wasn't charging at all for photo shoots, and then I was charging $50, I think, and then $85, then $125, and I just slowly built my rates up, but only after I had the demand built up, and I was taking as many photo shoots as I could just to try to get that experience, get my name out there. And then I just always ask people to tell their friends about me and to recommend me to other people if they enjoyed my services. Once I knew that my services were up to a standard and to a point that I was proud of them, it was a lot easier for me to ask people to recommend me and to ask other people to help me put my name out there. All right, well, that wraps things up for this video. I hope that my answers provided some insight for you, especially you guys who asked questions. Let me know down below. If you have any other questions or follow-up questions to any of these, stuff that I maybe brushed over or didn't cover as much, I'd love to answer your questions in the comments. If you don't mind leaving a like, it really helps me, makes me feel good about myself, helps my self-esteem. But hopefully you enjoyed the video, and I'll be back next week with another video.